Thank you for coming. Welcome you. It's a wonderful evening. We're here to pay tribute and have a little fun with the Zimmerman family, especially Charlie. And we welcome him, his sister, cousins, all those who've come near and far, Bishop Bullock, Pastor Brady, and everybody here who took time out of their evening to come and have some fun. Let's start off with something that's typically Lutheran, a prayer. May the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Gracious God, we thank you for this evening, this time to honor Pastor Charlie and his family and his mission here for 34 years, as well as 65 years of your life. Lord, we thank you for this meal. We thank you again for this day. Open our hearts and minds to the fun we'll have here tonight, the memories we'll share, the emotions that we'll feel, laughing, crying, and planning to have enjoyment, but also wishing him well on his new adventure in life. Lord, in Jesus' name we all pray. Amen. Well, I want to thank those who helped get everything picked up. Our hostess wanted me to say that he really appreciates that, and we're pretty much all cleaned up back there, but at the end, Jay's going to make another announcement, and if we do need a little more help, if you can spare maybe another 10 or 15 minutes, it will make things a lot easier for the transition to tomorrow morning. And also, I want to acknowledge all those that did help and put this together. Obviously, as you look around and what you saw here, you realize that it only took us a couple days to get this ready. But I want to thank Debbie Sivert, George, Madeline Bastow, Herman, and so many others. And if you would, anybody that had anything to do with setting up, writing, the meal, planning, anything, please stand up because we'd like to honor you at this time. So, here we are, Pastor Charlie. After 34 years, you're calling it a day. Well, you arrived in 1979. Well, that was the year that the devil decided to go to Georgia because he knew he couldn't stay in North Carolina. The captain in Tennille said, "Do that to me one more time," and you couldn't resist. Because, like the Blues Brothers, we knew that you have soul. We watched Apocalypse Now, spent some time in Manhattan, and couldn't help being there. But by breaking away, First Lutheran found itself with a young, leaping known pastor and a beautiful wife in tow, both full of vim, vigor, and energy. And now, 2013. Okay, you're still a beauty. You're out. Your outer beauty is exceeded only by the beauty in your heart. Externa forma tua magna, et in corda tu este mais teos. Two handsome and successful sons. Scott the 20 slipped me earlier. I'll do that back to you later. And you, Pastor Charlie. Well, the vim has vanished. The vinegar, not even salad dressing. But the energy, it's still there. And the 50 you slipped in will go in the plate in the morning. But seriously, though, the energy, it's amazing. How can it not be when you have more newer parts than a Boeing Dreamliner? And a battery that works. But all in all, we've been blessed by your presence and your grace with your ministry. And we hope you enjoy the evening and hold the immortal words of that country icon, Toby Keith, at the forefront of your thoughts as you move on after tonight. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. really wanted to say a couple things tonight. That would be Bishop Bowling and Pastor Grady Fett. You guys will come forward. Right behind you.
Well, good evening. It's so appropriate that we're here on Pentecost Eve because we're here celebrating the work of the Holy Spirit in the life of First Lutheran Church and the life of Charlie and Kay Zimmerman and how God's Holy Spirit brought you together some 30 plus years ago. Charlie, you have been an inspiration to me. We have walked many trails together. You have shared your wisdom, your candor, your insight, and I am so thankful for our walk together. Charlie has walked with me personally, and he's walked with the North Carolina Senate. He served a couple terms as Secretary of the North Carolina Senate. But as I think about Charlie, I thought it would be helpful just to remember how he came in part to be who he is. So I thought I'd like to talk to some people maybe back in Maryland where he grew up. And we've heard a lot of stories about Charlie's youth. And this is one I thought I would just share. It gives us some insight, I think, into who Charlie is and what makes him tick and how he is such a wonderful pastor. I'm guessing little Charlie was about 8 years old, and his mother said to little Charlie, "Why don't you go outside and play this afternoon while I get a meal ready?" So Charlie went outside with a bunch of his friends. They played all afternoon, and they played in the mud and the dirt, and when Charlie came back in about dinner time, he was filthy dirty. And his mother saw how dirty he was, but she didn't say anything. And Charlie walked in and he screamed at the top of his voice, "Who am I?" Well, his mother thought he was playing some kind of a game. So she said, she thinking she'd play along, she said, "I know who you are. You're Superman." And little Charlie said, "No, I'm not Superman." She said then, "Well, you must be Batman." And Charlie said, "No, I'm not Batman." And then little Charlie said, "And the woman down the street, she was right." And his mother said, "Well, what did the woman down the street say?" And Charlie said, "She said that I was so dirty that not even my own mother would recognize." Charlie has been proclaiming the good news in such a way that people know that they're recognizable to God. God has proclaimed God's grace through what Jesus did over and over again from this very place throughout the community and really across North Carolina, so that everyone knows that God recognizes them no matter how they might feel or what they might do. And Charlie, to us, you have been a Superman. You've had the gifts of Batman. You're a superhero. And Kay, thank you so much for your ministry and your ministry of standing beside Charlie. And to the family that's here, thank you so much. So on behalf of the North Carolina Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, Charlie, I want to say thank you. God bless you.
Charlie, I've got to be honest. I thought very seriously of not coming. Because it started at 6, and that's when every Saturday night, I've got to see Prairie Home Companion. And especially the end part of it, when Gary Harrison takes off on the little town that doesn't exist. And so I just brought my radio with me. And it's amazing that the quality of sound that you can get in here with this radio. But we worked hard together, and I don't think we had a whole lot of things that we could just make a kidding about. But I remembered one time that we both could share, that we were out here before this building was built, and we were going to have a groundsbreaking. And so we had set up the podium out there, and we had invited the mayor to come, and he came up, and but some dog had been there before him. And the dog left a few calling cards. And so the mayor, on his way up to there, stepped right into it. And you could see he looked down, and he looked up, and he looked down again. And I thought, I don't know about Charlie, but I could just barely hold it in. What we don't need to do is to laugh so hard at that. But then I was talking with Lois about it just a little bit earlier. She said, well, I remember one time when Charlie was helping out with the confirmation class, and they're all lined up around here. And you remember this with Charlie. And he started at one end, and he was speaking to every confirmand by name, and then said the words that we always say. And he got around here, and on this corner, he couldn't remember the boy's name. And Lois said, he stood there and he just kept doing it. No, like I said, we worked hard together, I think. And if we had a difference, we sat down and talked it through. And I don't remember having many differences like that. But we just, and it was not that we were trying to build something up for me or for him. We were trying to do what we thought we wanted God to have us to do. And so, even though he was the detail man, and I was the dreamer, and Charlie would come into a meeting, and he would bring his pad and his pen, and he started taking notes, and the next morning you would get an email that would give you the summary of what happened in that meeting. And all the while I was sitting there dreaming about what we could do if we had the money and had the time. And I was glad that I could read what Charlie had done when we got there. But Charlie, I enjoyed very much the time that we had working together. And you're going to have a lot of people who come up here. But when you come up here, I want you to be careful, because a lot of those calling cards you will be left right here. And be careful where you step.
Charlie, you were pretty adamant about letting everybody know that you didn't want a gift. But I hope for not 1 minute we thought we were going to let you get out of here without something. So we put a call out to the congregation because we know that you have a passion for feeding the hungry and for Greensboro urban ministry. Spent a lot of time and effort. And so most everybody in this room knows that there was a financial goal that we asked the congregation to assist us in achieving. And I want to dang a little carrot, because we're not going to tell you what that number is tonight. We're going to relay that number in the morning. But let me just say this. We achieved the goal, and we exceeded the goal. And I think tomorrow you will not only be proud of the effort put forth in this congregation, but humbled by what we're going to be able to do next night. At this point in time, we have a message from halfway around the world. Andy?
Madam, Bob 3 and I say, as we
It's live TV, so you have to bear with us.
Alexandra Perry, Queen of the United Kingdom, Supreme Governor of the Church of England, and Defender of the Faith, Queen Elizabeth II. Charlie, upon the occasion of your retirement, Queen Elizabeth has written you the following note. To the Reverend Dr. Charles Mercer Zimmerman, pastor, member of the ancient and noble order of the Terrapin, and Knight of the Legion of Holiness. Dear Charles, I understand that at age 65, after 39 years of ordained ministry, you are retired. What a curiosity. I myself just turned 87, have ruled my realm and served as head of the Church of England for over 61 years, and have no thought of retiring. You are just getting started. Perhaps you should reconsider. Let the people say amen. There's a Charles in my family also. My Charles is 64 years of age and hasn't gone to work yet. I feel a certain kinship, Charlie. You are senior pastor. I am queen and emperor by divine right. Simple, right? As you wave goodbye to First Lutheran and hello to new opportunities, I hope that this small but precious gift will help you do so with charm. It's all on the wrist. The gloves are off. A majestic goodbye and best wishes for a happy retirement. Leave. Charlie, of course, is following the advice of Mother Cabbage gave her offspring Brussels sprout. Quit when you're ahead. Charlie, you've been a punny pastor. You told us that in the Garden of Eden, the problem wasn't the apple in the tree, it was the pear on the ground. You told us that if you don't pay your exorcist promptly, you get repossessed. You told us that if a red ship collided with a blue ship, the survivors would be marooned. When you arrived in Greensboro in 1979, First Lutheran conducted its ministries with a budget of $249,179. Now we have a budget of well over $1 million. That's more than a 400% increase. In 1979, we didn't have a permanent worship room. Now we have not only a gorgeous traditional room, but also a new organ and chimes, a beautiful contemporary worship space, new classrooms, and many other additions to our facilities. In 1979, we had 2 worship services each Sunday. Now we have 5, 6 counting La Vega. In 1979, we had 1 adult choir. Now we have 2 adult choirs, a handbell choir, a brass ensemble, guitars, drums, harps, flutes, clarinets, trombones, violins, liturgical dancers, and more. Charlie, in 1979, all your body parts work. Now, not so much. 2 retina reattachments, multiple knee surgeries, and a knee replacement. Let's just say that in the nick of time for your retirement, you are now the new, reconstituted, and improved Pastor Charles. Your poise and patience were revealed one Pentecost Sunday. It was confirmation. Each confirmand knelt at the altar rail, waiting patiently for you to lay your hands of blessing on his or her head. You moved down the line flawlessly until you reached David DeCamp's head. As you stood with your hands on David's head, trying to remember his name, you passed the time by rolling your fingers on David's head. Wanting to be helpful but discreet, David whispered to you, "DeCamp, DeCamp, DeCamp." Finally, you whispered somewhat louder to him, "Yeah, but what's your first name?" And who can forget the baptism of Gene Bowman's first child? The power of the Spirit entered baby Bowman with such force that her pacifier popped out and dropped neatly into the baptismal pool. Nonchalant, Charlie proceeded with the sacrament. And when baby Bowman began to cry, Charlie just reached into the baptismal water, retrieved the pacifier, and popped it back into baby Bowman. Charlie, you have been the arms of God's love around our shoulders. For who you are, for what you mean to each of us, for bringing Kay with you, and for 34 years of faithful ministry, we give thanks to God and say to you, well done, good and faithful servant. Let the people say amen. 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 And now, live from First Lutheran, it's Saturday night.
It's Saturday Night Live, starring Doris Hanson, Jackie Bates, and Karen Brown. Pastor Jay Hilbinger. Chad Johnson, Jay, Doris Hanson, Jackie Bates, and Karen Brown. Pastor Jay Hilbinger, Chad Johnson, Jay Ross, and featuring Luke Bump, Bob and Joretta Klepfer, Joe Hensler, Lyman Newton, Andy Mitchum, Brian Russell, with musical guests Billy Summers and the First Lutheran Choir, and the Deutsche Day and the Lutherhosen. And now, your host for the evening, Bill Field.
Just welcome everybody again. You know I flew in from China and my arms are tired. But in all seriousness, let's give thanks again for a special night tonight to roast Dr. Reverend Charles Mercer Zimmerman. Or as many of us so affectionately call him, Hey Charlie! Yes, a special night to honor 34 years of ministry for a 65-year young man. That time when the gleam in your eye is just the sun hitting your bifocals. When you feel like the night after and you haven't been anywhere yet. Or when you know all the answers, but nobody's asking any questions. And 34 years in one place. Wow. But in all honesty, your time should not be done. I mean, you heard the Queen and what she did. And after all, it didn't take Moses 40 years to get out of Egypt. So. But need you have. I think we'd all agree with that. Your Eisenhower to Brady's Bradley. Your Mr. Roberts to Jay's Ensign Palmer. Or the Secretary General to the Synods UN. But enough already. We've got a very busy show. We want everybody to have a good time. So fasten your seatbelts, bring all trays and seats up to their original position, and let's take off and let the show begin. By the way, this is interactive, so if you recognize something,
Suspect recent activities of swimming cause water on brain.
But what makes you want to give up children? Sure, Charlie Brown. I can tell you what Christmas is all about.
No child wants to play with a Charlie in the ball, so I had to come here.
Good morning, angels.
You won! You did it! You did it!
Well, you got tomorrow off. I want to hear you say that tomorrow night. That's for me. Sorry, Charlie.
Charlie! Charlie! Charlie!
I'm right here. What do you want?
Darling!
How about I tell my mama?
You know him. Charles Monk. Explorer.
The Charleston, oh, how we can jump forward!
How much work do we check or we check with?
Explain love to me, Chuck. You can't explain love.
So go ahead, my dear. Laugh for Chuck.
I'm sure many of you recognize Chuck Norris and the similarities between Pastor Charlie and Chuck Norris. You know, Pastor Charlie once hit a horse in the chin. Now they call it a giraffe. Okay, it's a long night. Come on. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce our poet in residence, Jay Ross. Jay?
We have in life what we sometimes accept as truisms, things that we believe, we've just come to believe, like you can't judge a book by its cover. I haven't known Charlie for 30 years like some of you, and
and so I haven't learned all the stories that you have learned. But he has taught me another truism, or at least what I accept. You can make your own judgment. And that is that you can't judge the size of a man by his stature. Point being, he stands mighty tall for a short guy. And as evidence, I offer the following. He stands mighty tall for a short guy in the eyes of his congregation, because being a pastor has been his life and not just his occupation. He knows every member of his flock by sight, if not by name. And while I'm sure it isn't easy, he loves them all the same. He doesn't ask if you've been bad or good. He asks, are you feeling well? He cares if the life you're living feels like heaven or like hell. He ministers the best he can to guide us towards the former, and when we feel stuck in the latter, he tries to help our hearts feel warmer. With his punny sense of humor, you can't help but lighten up, and his constant gift of love overflows your cup. From baptismal font to altar, he guides us through the years, holding our spiritual hands through the laughter and the tears. He will be sorely missed by all of us. And for a while, it may feel gnarly. But we will continue in our faith. With many thanks for you, Pastor Charlie.
Charlie,
to a special part of the program. It's that program that we actually call a roast. We've got a few people that are willing to step out of their comfort zone, come up in front of you and speak. Now, we again sent out a call to the congregation, and we managed to get a few people to volunteer. They missed the Elton John Springsteen concert. They're too old to go to the prom, and they couldn't bear sitting home on another Saturday night being forced to watch Big Bang Theory reruns or forced to make a choice on Netflix. So here, without any further delay, I'd like to bring up Doris Hanson, Pastor Jay, Chad Johnson, and to lead us off, Karen and Jackie Bates.
Charlie, Karen, your cousin, and I, your sister, are here to do what family does best. Narc. I'm just going to share with you another side of your dear past. My little brother. From early on, one of my earliest memories of Charlie is how much he liked to scare me. He would hide and pop out and shout boo. Now, I don't know whether he was the anticipation of waiting, or whether it was he wanted to hear me scream and cry, or whether he was just being an annoying little brother. And you see, he takes pride in saying that he is the little brother, and I am the older sister. But Charlie, I don't think you ever realize the responsibility that goes with being an older sibling. Because we are responsible for the younger ones. Even if it means narking or telling the parents. For example, one night they sent me out to find my little brother because it was dinner time and he was nowhere to be found. And I scrounged around the neighborhood. I found him in a culvert smoking. Now, it didn't take much because Charlie was an odd shade of green. And my guardianship didn't lessen when we grew. You know, parents tell their children, don't do this and don't do that. Well, it always seems to be tempting. Don't take the car while we're out. I got a phone call, and it was the days before sales. Jackie, I'm fine. What do you mean? Well, I'm fine, but the car isn't. You see, he had taken the car in hopes of being home before our parents were. Anyway, so Mother and Daddy come home, and what do? Being the sweet older sister who cares very much for her brother, I run out and say, he's okay, he's okay. What do you mean? He's okay with the car. So our dad trundled off to pick him up, check things out, but actually he was pretty good about the whole thing. One other thing that you probably know about Charlie is that he loves numbers. Numbers have always come very easily for him. However, as a youth, he was not fiscally responsible. He had holes in his pocket, or should I say, every penny he earned was spent immediately and before that. But all kidding aside, I love my little, impish, fun-loving brother. I always have. We weren't necessarily close growing up. Yeah, we lived in the same house, we rode in the same car, picked on each other in the back seat, played with the neighborhood kids. Our parents insisted that we go to church on Sunday, regardless of what we did on Saturday night. We were there. But I want to tell you that never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that Charlie would pick the career that he did. But the call of the Lord is great, and you have been fortunate to witness the rest of the story. I've always been proud of you and loved you. I get very emotional when I watch and listen to my little brother because he has a powerful, heartfelt delivery. And more than that, as has been said here, Charlie walks the walk. He lives the love and caring of the word. I'm glad most of all for our adult relationship. You're more than my little brother. You're my friend, my confidant, my counselor, and my teacher. I want to tell you this is the best chapter of your journey, retirement. And I wish you happiness and fulfillment. And God bless. You better help me off when I get done. Okay, I think Andy's got a photo he's going to put up so that I can introduce you in yet a smaller size. You see the little one rubbing snot off his nose? That's Charlie. I don't know, maybe he was shy and didn't want to look up into the sun, but that's Charlie. Well, just was adorable. Now, Jackie there, you notice how I was? You girls think that you're showing your nails and that's new? See, that's Jackie over the left there. She is a little bit taller than he is, a little bit older. And my older brother is in there. My younger brother, I guess he was on my mother's knee someplace. I'm sure he must have been born, but you see that little cutie with the blonde cut up there? Yeah, showing her tummy. She doesn't show it anymore. I mean, she shows it. But okay, that's Charlie. He was always adorable. You could see there how adorable he was. And Andy, I need to correct you on a detail. When you composed a song for my 10th anniversary, you said we were cousins, but we weren't kissing. Well. That I got from Charlie, that was a boy-girl kiss. Took place in a Sunday school class. Now, in the past 13 years, he has kissed me many times in this building, too. But that was truly memorable for me to get a kiss from a cousin that was just a little bit older than I, and of course I had just a crush as big as the world. Now, my younger brother, who couldn't come, asked that I share this point. Charlie was loving enough to feel like a big older brother to Doug. Doug is 3 years younger than I, and when it became that important time that Doug learned the facts about girls, my parents one summer gave the assignment to Charlie. And Charlie proceeded to tell Doug everything and more than anybody could ever need to know. And I suspect they're still in conversation about that, I don't know. But Charlie took care of the birds and the bee stories, and my only reaction hearing this 2 months ago was, what were they thinking? Charlie's fun. Charlie's a lot of fun. You never see him without those dimples if he's in a good space, right? You hear that chuckle, you know that Pastor Charlie's around the corner. Doug says you had a lot of fun with that little boat that was your dad's car, and that you two had a fun adventure in that. It was not a dent fun, but you kicked up dust on cars, and Doug just thought you were better than anything. That's all I have to say about that. You know, Charlie is really generous. He's generous with his time. He's generous with his prayers, his love, his support. On the flip side, he was not very generous when we brought cookies that his mother had made, those chocolate chip ones. They must have been made in heaven because she instructed him to share some with Jim and me. We each got 2. Charlie, another adjective for Charlie is he's very efficient. You know, he, as mentioned before, he thinks of all the details. In fact, if you haven't gotten over here early enough on Saturday morning and you're on the altar guild, you will come and you will find that some mysterious little elf has already set up communion and changed the banners and maybe rearranged a few other things, and I'm not telling you who that was. And the Thanksgiving that Jim and I came in here and spent hours arranging the altar with canes and boxed packaged foods. In sweeps the pastor and rearranges it so that the sacrament can go there. I mean, come on. Then there's a time here recently when he had one of those fix-up jobs. Was it the right name, cutie? Kay, of course, was worried. She had to go back to work. She calls him. Karen, would you please go over there and get some lunch for Charlie because he needs somebody to take care of him. The hell? That day, Charlie taught me how to pour soup into a bowl, wash up that bowl, put that bowl in the dishwasher. I have to tell you, that was so helpful. Then there's this famous line, you might want to... Well, he's a man of vision. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought me here, huh? That phone call 13 years ago, I never dreamed it would end up like this. But he had such a strong vision that if he walks into this room and the cross is not right where it's supposed to be in the center, and if a banner is slightly 1/2 inch to the right, or if the altar is perhaps 1/8 of an inch to the left, there's going to be some rearranging done because this man with vision must have perfect symmetry. And if he walks into the Contemporary Center tomorrow morning and the rows are not exactly lined up by the ruler that J. Ross has determined, guess what? Service isn't starting. He asked me on Wednesday night, about 5 minutes before the service, what was off kilter, and I said, you are, go sit down. You may be retiring, but I reserve the right to always come and give you a kiss.
I said to you, Charlie, I didn't take any responsibility for any of this when we started, right? When we got together, it didn't take long for me to figure out what some of your gifts were. And I'll say a little bit more on the serious side about that later on. I'll have a little bit more to say to you and Kay later on tonight before we finish. But anybody who knows Charlie knows well of his love for pornography, right? Now, Cindy wanted me to stop and say P-U-N-ography, all right? Pornography, it is actually a word, I tell you, it is actually a word. And Charlie is a master of it. And it is simply the art and the study and the use of puns. And you are the best. And so, it's amazing how that rubs off on all of us, doesn't it? It has rubbed off on quite a few of us. So, on this occasion of your
retirement, I thought it would be good to share a few of those, and there's going to be even more later. But did you hear about the auto mechanic who kept working well into his 90s? He just loved retiring. And maybe, who knows, now that you've got a chance away from your work as senior pastor, maybe you can do some of that writing that you and I have talked about so often. Perhaps you can write a novel about Charlie's Garden, because I hear we've got a really good plot. And I know one of the things you look forward to is some traveling. And so we probably ought to give some traveling advice to you when you and Kay go off on all your travels. And the one thing to keep in mind is when you're boarding the plane, you step forward and you're coming down the aisle and you see that guy Jack that you know, don't yell, "Hi, Jack!" Okay? Please try to avoid that if at all possible. And under Charlie's leadership, some changes have happened while he's been here. In fact, people are choosing cremation over burial in a coffin more and more these days. And so, Charlie, you really help people think outside the box. I've been doing this for 16 years. 16 years, so anyway. One of the great things that Charlie and I have done in recent years is our Monday, twice a month meetings. Okay? Monday, twice a month meetings. Does anybody know where we have those Monday, twice a month meetings? Oh, I hear a few people say bricks. It couldn't be perhaps because Monday night is $2 pints, is it? But yes, as good German Lutherans and our love for our Bavarian heritage, we have indeed gone about that work of our twice a month Monday meetings at Rick's. And Barbara gets a kick out of it because every time we're leaving, I'm saying, I'm going to an important meeting on those Mondays, and she says, "Yeah, right, I know where you're going." And I said, "Barbara, we do a lot of work there." She says, "You're going to Bricks to drink beer." I said, "But Barbara, we really get a lot out of those." "Yeah, I'll bet." Anyway, but the interesting thing was that I found out that I never turned in a receipt for those meetings because I just didn't feel right about having the church pay for beer. Okay, I wouldn't do that. No alcohol on the expense account. That's just not something we do. But then I found out that Charlie was turning in his mileage. But it wasn't work. Why we should have anyway. Because every Monday, not only did we do a lot of work, but there were a couple of members who shall remain nameless that we always saw on those Mondays when it was time for the $2 pints. And so I'm looking around, but no, I won't mention any names. Some things that happen at First Lutheran and at staff meetings or staff retreats or even in the sacristy stay at those locations. So kind of the Vegas rules sometimes apply. And so y'all are safe. Those of you who show up for those Mondays or Thursdays at Bricks, your identity will never be revealed, all right? But then Charlie did explain why he did take mileage for those meetings. He says, "Jay, we see so-and-so there every time. We're just doing pastoral care, right?" Absolutely. So I take mileage now, too. Yeah. But one of those things that is said in the sacristy that maybe shouldn't be said, I'm going to go ahead and tell it, Charlie. I'm going to go ahead and tell it. One day I walked right into one of his puns. I tell you, I set him up with a big fat pitch and he swung and hit it over the fence. we were back here preparing on Monday of Holy Week. We always checked everything to make sure everything was ready to go, and all the it wasn't Holy Week. I'm sorry. It was a week of Ash Wednesday. It was the first week of Lent, and on Monday of Holy Week, we walked around and checked in the sacristy and went through our checklist and made sure everything was ready. And Charlie looked at me and he said, "I've got a question." He said, "Did you happen to order any ashes for Ash Tuesday and Ash Wednesday service?" And I kind of shook my head because we've been together for several years and Charlie had always taken care of ordering the ash, right? And so I looked at him in all seriousness and, with this slightly panicked look on my face, thinking he was thinking I should have ordered the ash. And I said, "Charlie, I just figured you do that because you always do that." And he looks at me and he says, "Jay, you know what happens when you assume? You make an ash out of you and me." I walked right into it. But then I started to plot and plan, and the next year I got him back. The very next year I thought, that's going to come back to haunt you, Charlie. And so the next year we were coming in, and it was Ash Tuesday, which we do with Face Out at 11 a.m., the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday. And I said, "Charlie, I've got a really big question for you." I said, "Look, I've been doing this imposing of ashes all along now in this same way with my thumb," and I said, "I just want to make sure I'm doing it right." And he looked at me and I said, "Charlie, tell me, how do you impose the ashes? Do you go from top down and then across, or do you go across first and then bottom up, or whatever? How do you impose the ashes?" And he got all serious. He's like, "Oh, you get to share my wisdom." And he says, "Well, Jay, I've done that on many occasions, and I've thought about it. He says, sometimes I don't even think about it, but now that you caused me to reflect on it," he says, and he goes into this very lengthy liturgical explanation, right? And then he says, "But tell me, why were you asking? You've been doing this for a while now." And I said, "Charlie, I just didn't want to do it ash backwards." One good pun deserves another. It took me a whole year to sit on that one. And Charlie, always will appreciate your sense of humor, as there's much more to go tonight, and I have a few words to say later. But just remember, and all of us keep this in mind, Charlie has taught us this, and that is 7 days without a pun makes 1 week.
I kept wondering how I was going to get up. The first time I met Charlie and Kay was when somebody brought the First Lutheran to a council meeting. I happened to be on council at the time, and to introduce our new pastor coming in to the council. And they walked in the door, and I looked at them, and I thought, God, they're so young. And Kay, you are still as beautiful as you were 34 years ago. This is about Charlie, right? Okay. Charlie, I'm going to get a little serious now. I'm not funny like these other guys. That's the funniest joke and funniest line I just completed. My fondest memory of you is going to be the way God spoke to me personally through you. Certainly in your sermons, but specifically in Bible study. Now, I've never claimed to be a biblical scholar. I have read my Bible. I've been teaching Sunday school off and on since I was a teenager. And that's a long time ago. But I I knew so many Bible verses. They were so familiar to me, the 23rd Psalm, verses from the Gospels. And I think I got to the point in my life where I thought I knew all there was to know about them. But in your leadership Bible study, you have unfolded these scriptures to me, and I feel I hear God speaking to me through them. Very satisfying with the refrigerator. If you want to remember it, write it down. So, another time when God spoke to me through you was about 4 or 5 years ago when you made an announcement in Sunday school that the church was looking for someone to teach the 4-year-old Sunday school. My immediate reaction was, not me, that's somebody else. This went on for 3 or 4 Sundays, I guess, with you and Jay asking, and each time I said, not me, I've done my share, let somebody else do it. About the 5th Sunday, when God spoke through you to me again, I said, okay, God, I'll do it. And that, teaching those 4-year-old children has been one of the most wonderful spiritual experiences of my life. And one final story. When the 4-year-olds come in, well, I don't teach Sunday school anymore because I get down all right, but I can't get up. So I turned it over to younger legs than mine. But anyway, then, when they come in, the 4-year-olds come into Sunday school, the first thing they do is take their shoes off because they're on holy ground. So I asked them, one day I just decided to expand a little on this, and I said to them, you're on holy ground, what does that mean? And they all, in one voice, said, well, God is here. And I said, God is here? And I looked around, and I said, I don't see him. Are you sure God is here? And when darling little 4-year-old boy looked up at me, put his 2 little hands over his heart, and he said, I know he's here, because he's in my heart. Wonder of wonders. God spoke through you to me, and through me to a 4-year-old. Hallelujah. Thank you.
So, I was approached to be part of the roast. And the first thing that goes through my head is, how do you roast your pastor? So I thought for like 20 seconds, and then the idea just started rolling. So I'm going to open with a joke. One day God was looking down on earth. He's getting more and more frustrated about all the rascally behavior that's going on. So he says, you know, I think I'm just going to go and send an angel down, check things out. The angel stays down there a while, comes back, and says, yeah, it's pretty bad down there. It's like 95% of the people are misbehaving, 5% are good. God thinks for a second and says, I guess maybe we'll just wait a little while and we'll send a second angel, get a second opinion. A little time goes by. Says, hey, I need you to go down there for me. Check things out. Angel goes down, comes back. Yep. Just like the first guy said, it's bad. 95% not doing right. 5% doing pretty good. So God says, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm frustrated. It's 2,000 something. I'll send an email. Send an email with 5%. Just kind of reassure them, you know. Make sure that everybody's good. Huh? Hey, Charlie, what did that email say? Oh, no? I didn't get one either. So anyway, The other thing I started thinking about was, I got a key to the church, so I must be important, right? How many people have a key to the church? Just raise your hand. Yeah, look around you folks, there's like 1,000 people. I think if you give a buck or two, they'll throw you a key. But anyway, so the other day, it was a little late in the evening. It was after a meeting. And I'm walking around the church, and I'm like, you know what? We're supposed to do something fun for Charlie, so I'm just going to snoop around a little bit. And I went in his office, and I'm snooping around. And I'm holding my key, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm pretty important, right? So I'm walking around his office, and I open up this little pantry thing in there, which I didn't know existed. And I realize my key opens up this filing cabinet that nobody knows about. Right? I'm like, all right, this is going to be good. So I open up the filing cabinet, and inside there's a file that's called Charlie's Notes for the New Pastor. I'm thinking, oh boy, this is awesome. Well, here's some of what I found. I've been around the church for a while, did some beach retreats and things with Pastor Charlie. And first thing I see was, the youth of the church love it. You're going to have to help me with this. If you start every day of a beach trip with a choreographed version of Rise and Shine. But you got to do it with your fingers. It's like Rise and Shine. I mean, it's like 6:30 in the morning, right? You're like, go and sit down. That's all. So I keep thumbing through. The next thing I come across is a seating chart for morning worship. A seating chart for morning worship. And there's a sticky note attached to the seating chart that says, times for worship are subject to change. 9 o'clock, 9:15, 10:13. The other thing I found was a list of nonverbal cues from 1999 indicating that the sermon's running a bit long. And I think we all know that really pertains to Jay's sermons. You roast one, you got to roast both of them. It's a package deal. This one was odd, and some of you will know this, but the next thing that I found was fake $3 elevator passes for new members. Because there are people who don't know that there is an elevator shaft back there, but there's no elevator. Now that's just mean, Sean. And there's a whole bunch of them paper clipped together. There must have been 15 or 20 of them. I found a copy of Charlotta Selder's family tree because she's related to everybody in this room. Oh, God. And the last thing that I found in there, before I get serious, right? I'm going to do that. I found headshots and I found scouting reports for potential council presidents. But the funny thing is, Charlie, not a picture of me was anywhere to be found. But I have had the extraordinary opportunity to grow up here at First Lutheran. Along with me for most of those years has been Pastor Charlie. And like I said before, he and I have been to Curry Beach. We've been to Agape. We've been to Lutheridge. He married Jacqueline and I. He baptized both of my kids. He's an unbelievable leader. He's taken our church to new heights throughout his tenure here, right? We've seen him go from dark-haired business Charlie to snow-capped cool hip Charlie. You guys remember? I will never forget. He showed up on a Sunday. I don't know, it was like his hair was all this way. And I was like, whoa! I'm like, you look like Michael. That's awesome. But you know, then he coming tonight and it's phoned over to you. I'm like, oh God, there's that joke. I'm glad you laughed. But anyway, so then I started thinking, well, he's getting ready to take a step into the real world. So, like, I'm a little concerned about that, you know, because it's different out there, Charlie, to be one of us. Because in the real world, you do know, Charlie, that Barbara's not going to answer your telephone. You're probably going to lose your reserved parking at the hospital. But it's not a bad walk from the parking deck. It's really. Oh, you're going to have to make alternate Tuesday lunch plans, because Face Out's not going to feed you for free anymore. I'm in Face Out, they don't play. Janice, not going to balance your checkbook. Henry's not going to change your light bulbs. And you know, you can't get away with dumping water on kids' heads and then saying, oh, it's baptism. You're riding down the road and the police stops you. You can't say, oh, it's okay, officer. I'm sure Jesus' word can wait while you write out that ticket. And lastly, we're going to need that communion line tab paid before you leave. But you know, it is certainly my pleasure to have been asked to do this. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So I am going to ask you to stand, even though it's not the end, but I want us to all stand, rise and shine, and give Charlie our glory. Thank you.
As you all know, Chad performs every Sunday night at 6:30. So please, we'd like to see it shout if you can get a chance. Grace rains down. Thanks, Chad and Henry Doris, Pastor Jay, Jackie, and Karen. Thank you so much for sharing. Chad kind of touched on this a little bit because Charlie is going out to the world, and there are a few of us here in the congregation who have been businessmen, and some of us have not been at the same company for many, many years. So we've had the chance to experience an exit interview. So, Charlie, an exit interview is about to be had. Lyman?
And when I grow too old to dream, your love will live in my heart. Your love will live in my heart. Your love will live in my heart.
Okay, well, Charlie, this is a chance for us to do a little question and answer. But how are you feeling about the show so far, Charlie? Okay, I'm sure you've been thinking about what you want to do. We hope you're enjoying it. Now, tell us what prompted you to retire now.
I don't find this stuff amusing.
Okay, I'm sure you've been thinking about what you want to do. How do you see yourself spending retirement? Really? Anything else? So, Kay, how do you feel about Charlie pulling away from church work? I'm sure you are. And you, Charlie? Now, Charlie, has Pastor Jay indicated how he feels about you retiring? You're 65 now, if I'm not mistaken. Can you paint us a picture of life at this age?
A man walks down the street and says, why am I soft to live now? Why am I soft to live? The rest of my life is so hard.
I'm sure you weren't exactly on fire when you had knee replacement last year. What was your attitude?
They call me still beautiful. Yes, everybody knows that.
Well, Debbie Sivert was your physical therapist. How did she motivate you for exercise? And your health now? What's your biggest challenge? Yes, we've been hearing from the good cooks at Face Out for some time now. What does your doctor tell you? Let's look back on your leadership for a minute. How does 34 years of ministry in one place change a man? There have certainly been some more memorable events here in your time. For instance, constructing a new building, which certainly raised some conversations. What did people say about that?
This land is your land, this land is my land.
Now, overall, how have you managed to cope with congregational politics?
So why am I short of attention now? Short with a span of attention.
Now, you've been in leadership a long time. Sometimes people will accuse you of things, for instance, micromanaging. How about your character? How about you characterize your philosophy as a senior pastor?
But please do nothing till you hear it from me. Hey, you never will.
Well, now, on the other hand, many of us have known you to be an excellent grief counselor. What's your secret? Okay, let's talk about your sermons for a moment. What do you think people will be saying about them years from now? There are certainly still issues before us as a congregation. Do you have any parting advice, for instance, on, say, stewardship? Whoa, that's dark. Anything else you think we need to know? Ah, yes. Always worth the reminder. Now, what do people say to you most these days? Okay, I know your decision is final. Oh yeah, here it is. Your decision is final, or else we wouldn't be doing this. But what if all 400 of us here decided not to let you leave yet?
Just slip out the back, Jack.
All right, we'll let you then. You've earned it. Well, Charlie, we all have a legacy. How would you like to be remembered here at First Lutheran?
Don't want to end up a cartoon graveyard.
Uh-huh. And how would you like to be remembered?
Although you'd say I'm pretty fly for a rabbi.
Yes, we will certainly want to remember you that way as our pastor, Charlie. Unfortunately, when we went looking for pictures, we just seemed to find so many of you in drag. Why is that? Well, finally, we've been told it's important to you to be away from FLC during the next year. Bishop Olick, have you told Charlie where he might be?
Somewhere beyond the sea.
Now, you're also preparing for your last Sunday with us tomorrow, and I understand you're going to sing with the contemporary group. Could we hear a little bit of it?
I see
Well, not to be outdone, I understand Billy and the choirs have also asked you to sit in at 11:15. Now, could we hear a little bit of that? Well, thank you, Charlie. It's been a pleasure talking with you this evening. Are there any parting words you have for the congregation or Pastor Jay? Oh, okay, thank you. That's enough for now. We certainly look forward to hearing from you tomorrow in worship. Thank you. Thanks, Lyman. I really appreciate it. Isn't it amazing how Charlie took on so many of those different voices? You know, Charlie, you know I fly a lot, spend a lot of time in an airplane. And over the last couple of years, I've had that impair my hearing a little bit. So when I heard Bob Plepfer earlier say that you had been a punny pastor, I thought he said puny pastor. And I have to admit that I was just terrified to hear something like that, especially for somebody who was 5'7" in heels. But I stand corrected. So, Charlie, if you would, please come and join me in this chair. And if the funny people would start lining up 1 through 25 on this side, 28 through 50 on this side. And would security please approach the stage for me? Charlie, we're going to have a little fun with you, and this is going to be a little bit of an exercise, but we wanted to make sure that you were bound to have a good time. Okay, are we ready? Let's start with number one.
Charlie, did you hear about the guy whose whole left side was cut off? He's all right now. I used to have a fear of hurdles, but I got over it. I wondered why the baseball was getting bigger, and then it hit me.
I couldn't quite remember how to throw a boomerang, but eventually it came back to me.
A small boy swallowed some coins and was taken to the hospital. When his grandmother telephoned to ask how he was, a nurse said, "No change yet." Pencils can be made with erasers on both sides, but what would be the point?
What did the grave say when he got stepped on? Nothing. But it did let out a little whine.
Did you hear about the guy who got hit in the head with a can of soda? He was lucky it was a soft drink. Two hats were hanging on a hat rack in the hallway. One hat says to the other, "You stay here, I'll go on ahead." We're a little out of order, but that's always the way we are, isn't it? No matter how you push the envelope, it'll still be stationary. A boiled egg in the morning is hard to beat.
The dead batteries were given out free of charge.
We've all been to the dentist often enough to know the drill.
When the cannibal showed up at their luncheon, they gave him the cold shoulder.
I went to the bookstore and asked the salesperson for the self-help section. She said if she told me, it would defeat the purpose.
Police were called to a daycare when a 3-year-old was resisting arrest.
I used to do rock climbing as a youth, but I was much older.
Experts say the cost of funerals has risen by 50%. They blame it on the cost of living.
If you ate both pasta and antipasta, would you still be hungry?
In the winter, my dog wears his coat, but in the summer, he wears his coats and pants.
Since light travels faster than sound, some people appear right here than speak.
The raisin whined about how he couldn't achieve greatness.
Not being able to iron out all his problems made the dry cleaner very depressed. 2 silkworms had a race. They ended up in time.
A dog gave birth to puppies near the road. She was ticketed for littering.
Did you know that if you hear from the horse's mouth, you're listening to a naysayer?
A chicken crossing the road is poultry in motion.
The magician got so mad, he pulled his hair out. The little old woman who lived in a
The chickens were so distraught when the tornado destroyed their home. Hopefully they will be able to recoup.
In honor of Jay, Katie Beth and I both lost our cards. When the TV repairman got married, the reception was excellent.
When Kay married Charlie, she got a new name and a dress.
Charlie and Kay's wedding was so emotional, even the cake was in tears.
Remember when Charlie drove his expensive car into a tree and found out how the Mercedes band?
Charlie was so poor growing up and couldn't even pay attention.
Charlie told me you don't need a parachute to skydive. You only need one to skydive twice.
We thought Charlie was indecisive, but now we're not so sure.
Please remind Charlie that those who get too big for their britches will be exposed to the end.
A reminder from Pastor Charlie, atheism is a non-profit organization.
Charlie was little. He didn't tell his mother he ate some glue. Lips. Going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than standing in the garage makes you a car. Charlie is supposed to respect his elders, but it's getting harder and harder to find it.
When two people just meet, it's an eye for an eye.
When Charlie was 20, he wanted to be a ballet dancer, but he found it too different. When Charlie turned 24, he thought he might want to be a transplant surgeon, but his heart just wasn't in it.
Abby once told someone that Mom had photographic memory, but she just never developed it. One time, Dad wanted to be a banker, but then he lost interest.
Charlie was very colorful in his youth, but now he's just gray areas.
Charlie's the king of puns. This is my husband. When they get together, that's all you hear. Kay and I just go, roll our eyes, and say, this journey is going to be too long. But I have one last one for you, Charlie. You were certain that your tide would come in, but you really weren't very sure that it would be there.
We figured given the shape of your knees, a 5K was enough. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, everybody.
You see what they got me roped into?
And now, just like Jay, we're going to have to wait a whole year before we get him back. Well, Charlie, after 34 years, you can imagine that there's been a little fodder, as you've seen. And really, there were some things that we decided that we had to let kind of drop from the line. But in the name of mercy and grace, which is really been the trademarks of your ministry, we wanted to at least give you a feel for some of the things that we had incorporated into.
And now it's time for Reminiscing with Scott and Mary.
Stepdad's done, and I remembered how much he's like always backing into things. I don't remember that. Really? Oh God, he's backed into the garage door like 3 times. Yeah, he's backed into the basketball goal, and he backed into that mail truck. I don't remember that. Oh man, you're killing me. He backed into your car like twice when he was teaching me how to drive. Scott, I have no recollection of that ever. Oh, dude, you're killing me.
As you can tell, no expense was spared. You can see the similarities between Scott and Michael.
We begin our classroom with the questionnaire that was used for 2016 Briefing by Bernard Thibault. What is your favorite word?
Punitive. It's the cry of the heart.
What turns you on?
Left behind.
The question the students wait for each week. What is your favorite curse word?
But I must tell you, I like f***ing... You and I just run out of words.
Charlie, you are going to have an opportunity to come up and address everybody. Go ahead.
You're supposed to say that. Remember, this is the yellow.
Oh, this one. This is a kind of a modern take on evolving Lutheran technology, or Lutheran theology. But we say, well, yes and no. Two. You can see we rehearsed this a lot. Well, it was going to work out windy because I got a tweet from Mr. Obama. Yeah, just came in. I don't know why he sent it to me. It says, Bill, I understand you're doing something for Charlie tonight. But can you please pass this on? PC, it's the Prez. Oh, awesome. 34 years, but retirement? We call that Obama. Michelle, I have her under the radar checking on con law and term limit options. And I'll keep you posted. But your time now. LOL, Prez. Oh, it is good. Okay, it's your turn, Charlie. Oh, Wester, we had to cut the budget. But we decided to work it in anyway. That's the thing.
Well, I'm deeply honored by tonight. Never dreamed of so many people gathering to say goodbye. And for the program, I know a lot of hours went into it, and don't know how you guys put all that together, but it's certainly no reflection on me. 34 years has just been a great journey. I came here, and I remember one of the questions the call committee had was, well, where's he going to go from here? And I remember your words was, that's not for us to worry about. And it's been a tremendous journey, because one of the gifts that you've given me is the ability to grow and to develop and to mature, for the most part, and to become the person that I am. And that only happens through a congregation of love and support and care. And that's who you are. And that's what you've provided. The leaders of this congregation have been fabulous. And it's been my privilege to serve with two great pastors, Pastor Brady and Pastor Jay. They're phenomenal people to be with, and to share ministry with, to grow with. And as I said on Thursday to Jay, she's all yours. And I won't tell you what Jay said. Could never have done this without my wife. It's trite to say behind every good man, there's a very strong and good woman, but it's true. She's gone through a lot of nights when I'm out, a lot of weekends when I'm gone, and she's maintaining her own career. She's the one who listens when I just need to unload. It's the only safe place a pastor really has to go. And she's been there. One of the reasons I married her was because of her strength of faith and character. She put up with nothing from me. And for my two boys, you have nurtured them in the faith. You've helped them to grow to be the people they are. And they too have suffered through a lot of parental absence, but they also know that I've tried to prioritize the time to be there to share the journey. And one of the things they've been wanting me to do for the last number of years, they've been in Charlotte, they're both at Christ Lutheran, said, Dad, when are you going to come and worship with us? And my answer is, next Sunday. I cannot thank you enough for the gift of love that you've given me, for the ministry for which we are known in the community, for the way we worship, and the way we care for each other. And I know that will be a continuing feature of this congregation. It was here before I got here. It's what I was able to build on first with Brady and then with Jay. And I hope that's what you and the staff and others will be able to build on. I've been blessed with a great staff through all of these years. You talk about having a wife that helps you be who you are. Well, as a pastor of the church, it's the staff who really helps you to be the kind of pastor that you ultimately end up being. And so I would like for all the staff that's here, if you would stand, because you're the ones who really deserve the applause. So please stand. I jokingly said to Jay, gosh, I've never seen so many people here at one time. The only thing we should have changed, we should pass an offering. do have a tendency to micromanage. So, what a great job they've done, and again, I wish they would stand because you really deserve our heartfelt appreciation for standing. Tomorrow will be a very emotional moment for me. I've been surprised this week coming into this space on Thursday. You have been a part of your lives, you've been a part of mine. And I guess the scariest thing about retirement is the sudden absence of connections. But I know that you will hold me in your prayers. The joke is, if you want to find Charlie, Kay's got him in the grocery store. You might see me on a golf course, you might see me at Urban Ministry, the IRC, and we'll carry each other in our hearts. And in time, when it's appropriate, God willing, we'll be back. Kay will continue on. But thank you for the gift of being you and the privilege of serving as one of your pastors. It's just been a great journey. Thank you for tonight, but thank you for the 34 years of doing ministry together.
Pastor Charlie, know that your new journey begins Monday, and we will leave the light up. Understand again that no expense has been spared. We brought in a specialty group just for this evening.
Yeah, I'm Hans.
I'm Franz.
And these are the Wurstbrats. Wurstbrats? Yeah, the Wurstbrats. And we're all here to pump you up! Well, wie geht's, Franz?
Wie geht's a hangover from all this American beer?
Crazy beer. Yeah, but we're still waiting here to give Pastor Charlie his gift.
Yeah, let's give him his gift. It's from these people we met in beer fights. They saw our show and flew us here for the retirement party.
They saw us performing in Europe, and they taught us this song that we're going to teach you. Okay, band? Ready? Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. I heard it was a formal camping trip, guys. Come on. It's time to wind down tonight. And as we wind down, we continue to think about how this affects all of us emotionally, and to be honest about our tears, and to not hold them back, because, again, it is the gift of God's love through Charlie and through Kay and through their family that we experience those tears. And it's okay. It's okay. It is part of how God heals us. And we also thank God tonight for the tears of laughter. Thank you, Charlie and Kay. Thank you, Scott and Michael. Thank you for the gift you are, have been, and continue to be for each of us. I do want to say one thing, and that is, Kay, thank you for who you are and what you've done. We know we hear Charlie said that he could not be who he is. He could not be the gift God called him to be without you. And so would you please stand so that we can thank you and express that to you. One last thing I'll share, many things. I've been writing in my journal a list of things I'm thankful for that Charlie gave me, and I hope all of you take the time to do that. I hope each of you, if you haven't already done a video or provided something for one of his gifts in terms of a thank you, even if you have done that and something else comes to mind, express your thanks with a note, a card, a letter, anything you wish to do, because that will be incredibly meaningful to him as the years unfold, and also to each of you to write down those thanks and say a prayer as you do it to give God thanks. Nothing brings God's heart closer to us than when we are in deep gratitude. And I thank you for sharing this journey. And that's what my last word is to you in terms of my thanks. 16 years ago, I've been a pastor for 7 years at one large church, and I came here and there was a lot of, angst and anxiety and that desire to be what you wanted me to be and figure that out. And I remember sitting in your office the very first week I was here, and I was thinking through some of the work that we were laying out that we had to do together, that I was going to be responsible for, and things like that. And I'll never forget, as I shared with you earlier this week, what you said. And you said, Jay, God in this congregation has called you here to be their pastor, not to do it like I would do it, not to be me or do it my way, but to be you. God has called you here to go about your ministry and your work as God will do it through you, your way. Please do it the best you can with my blessing and with God's. And for Charlie, I thank you for that. I've tried to live that as we've been through our 16 years together, and I'm forever grateful for that piece of advice. And that's one of the gifts that Charlie has given to each of us. He calls out the gifts in us to express that child of God, that Spirit of God living in and through us that is unique to each of us. He didn't say, and he doesn't say, do it my way. He says, together we'll seek and listen and do it God's way. And I thank you, and we thank you, Charlie, for that gift. One last time, let us say thank you with applause to Pastor Charlie. Put this together tonight. Too many to name, but thank you for all of you who have worked so hard to put this night together. We'll see you tomorrow for worship, 9 o'clock, contemporary worship space, 11:15 here, and look forward to Charlie's farewell sermon. And again, a reminder, he will be back. He will be back among us after a time away. That time away as we do the interim work, that time away as we do the call process, And we look forward to, just like Brady has returned to be among us, your return as well, as we give thanks not only this night and tomorrow, but as the journey continues. God is with us. The Lord be with you. God is also with you. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for the gift of laughter, and we thank you for the gift of tears. Ways that you heal us and remind us that you're close. Windows that open that veil that sometimes masks the connection between the eternal and the temporal. God, as we say farewell to Charlie and to Kay, even if it's for a time, as we say this farewell, we trust in that closeness to give us strength for the journey. Everything that he has taught us and shown us will speak to us of the desire and the need to just trust, and that he and all of us will be okay because you walk with us on this journey. We thank you, God, for those promises. We thank you, God, for this night. We thank you for this man and his incredible gifts of ministry. We thank you for all the ways in which we will carry his life, legacy, love, your love, a reflection of your grace with us for the rest of our lives. And gracious God, tonight, we thank you so very much for the gift of Pastor Charlie. And all God's people said, Amen. God's work, our hands. Good night. We'll see you tomorrow. Blessings. And we'll see you tomorrow as the journey continues, the celebration continues.